So my name is Manish Solanki. As it says on the slide, I am the leader of Mercer's operational due diligence business in Europe. But I'm also the co-lead of the Diversity Project Mental Health workstream. Before I dive into my presentation, I want to tell you why I am here. So a little history about me. At the end of the 90s, I worked for a firm called Mercury Asset Management, and I'm fine about mentioning them now because they don't exist. It was not a good time for me. I was struggling, feeling like I was working really hard, but not actually making any progress. I won't go into loads of detail, but it was, I was actually being bullied by my manager at the time. And to highlight there, this is the person that told me to shave my beard off. At the time, I was also going through a divorce, so time at home was also really, really difficult. Anyway, the situation got worse and worse, and I found myself not being able to sleep for days because of the stress. I tried counseling, but that didn't really work at the time. The issue was I didn't actually know what the problem was. I don't know if it was me or my boss or the wife. It seemed like I'd made a mess of everything, and all I wanted to do was crawl under a rock and hide. So eventually I quit work and decided to take some time out. At this point, I can say I was at my lowest. Now, I'm from an Indian heritage, but was born in Leeds. I booked a flight to India to, as the cliche says, find my roots, but also to learn a bit more about Hinduism. So at the time, praying to a higher being was giving me some comfort that my situation might get better. What was originally going to be a 3-month trip actually turned out to be 7 months. I toured all around India. I visited many Hindu and Buddhist spiritual centers called ashrams. I did yoga, I did meditation, I did sightseeing, I visited family. The highlight was when I met the Dalai Lama and also did a 10-day meditation in the north of India. It was a turning point for me. It was a point where I could actually put everything behind me and look forward. So I went home to my parents in Leeds with no home of my own, no job, a lot of debt, and a divorce under my belt. I borrowed some more money, came down to London, got a job where I didn't have a team or any client responsibilities. It was a demotion, but I was fine with that. I wasn't sure if I wanted to stay in the finance industry after being bullied at Mercury. The priority was to pay off the debts and build up my confidence again. That was when I joined Mercer 22 years ago. Now, I just want to clarify, I'm not a mental health expert in any way. I have read lots about mental health and practiced lots of different things, but ultimately, I understood that it was my mental health that was a problem at the time. I think it took around 10 years for me to get into a better headspace, but I'm still on that journey now. One of the things I learned through my spiritual practice was that the act of service can help me as well as others. So about 7 years ago, I started leading the mental health employee resource group at Mercer, and that led me to obviously work with the Diversity Project, and that's why I am here today. Anyway, that's me oversharing, so let me get on to the slides. So I thought it might be interesting to understand why our attitudes towards mental health are the way they are, what they look like today, and what they could be like in the future. So again, I'm not an expert on the history of mental health. I just did a bit of research on the internet. So the first slide, this is of men in the 18th century, Georgian period. I mention this as it's a period when men are quite comfortable looking inward and reflective. They all are. Being manly at the time was being virtuous and wise, which I think was quite interesting. The second picture is men in the Victorian period, and I think this is where things changed for us. Darwin's evolutionary theories outlined new roles for men and women. Women became viewed as biologically inferior and prone to irrational behavior. We, in contrast, were restrained and rational. By the 19th century, Britain became the world's leading industrial nation, and as a nation, we had to project power and control. Industrialization also divided labor by sex, so mining and construction was predominantly male environments. Medical literature about mental health at the time as well was dominated by case studies about women, apart from when we went to war and were in combat. So where are we today? We've all heard the statistic already. The grim statistic that I think everyone has heard is that suicide is the biggest killer of middle-aged men. There is still an expectation that we need to be a certain way. I think women look for stability and security, and so so men want to act manly, and despite what's going on in their heads, basically. Now, I think with the focus on mental health, the tide is turning, but there is still a way to go. I'm generalizing here, but we don't talk about problems and feelings when we're out with friends. When we go to the pub, we talk about football, which has always been a problem for me because I also don't like football. To this day, I still don't talk about personal things when I'm out with my mates. I'd rather have a laugh and drink a bit too much. What helped me is knowing that I needed to look inwards. So through meditation, I was able to identify problems and then work on ways to fix these issues. I found counseling really helped when I found the right counselor. Now, the fact is that women use mental health support twice as much as men do. And I think that's one thing that definitely needs to change. So what does tomorrow's man look like? I think there's a greater need for us to understand that it's all in our heads. We know that the need for physical fitness, but we also need to train our minds. So whether it's through meditation, mindfulness, whatever we want to call it, it all does the same thing. Counseling helped me a lot as I learned about cognitive behavioral therapy, transaction analysis, and neuro-linguistic programming. But we shouldn't go there when things are bad. We should go there as part of our mind training. I also think having role models in an outside workplace are important. One of mine, like many others, is Stuart White, who is, as you know, the exec sponsor of the mental health work stream, but also the CEO of HSBC Asset Management. I feel that now is a time to shift from crisis to preventative support for us. There are lots of things that can be done, and ultimately it's down to the individual, but I think helping us work on the foundations of good mental health is key. So the first picture is sleep. Getting enough sleep is so important for cognitive health. I would like to see more workplace education around sleep. And employers recognizing that a balanced lifestyle is important for us as well as them. Good nutritional food is the topic of the second picture. Eating fatty, salty, sugary, processed food is not good for your brain or your diet, or your body. Eating late at night disturbs your sleep, and if you're drinking alcohol too, it's going to severely impact your sleep and your mental health the next day. I believe that's called a hangover. Perhaps we can raise awareness of how food and alcohol has an impact on the brain. The final one is exercise. Now, I said I don't like football, but having something like a five-a-side football team, a running club, or what I like doing, which is cycling, are ways in which we can socialize while boosting mood-enhancing hormones. So on top of the medical insurance, the employee assistance programs, the mental health first aiders, I would like to see some of these things happening more in the workplace. So this is my call to action today. So as you know, I ended up staying at Mercer. I was fortunate to have great role models, mentors, and line managers that saw my potential and pushed me. I married an amazing woman who was the answer to all that praying I did, and we had the son Kian in 2022. In 2021, I was diagnosed with ADHD, which turned out to be the reason for many of my struggles. Once I had that final piece of the puzzle, everything made sense. This year, Mercer promoted me to partner. Now, in my case, I'm in a much better place, but for some of us, getting to this place is really, really hard. So that is why I wanted to speak to you today. Thank you for listening.